Big game coverage live from Glendale, Arizona. Powered by AA Best Bail Bonds, Southern Recipe Small Batch Pork Rinds, Texas Cheer, and by 94.1 San Antonio Sports Star.
Good morning to you. Good morning, good morning. This is R&R in the Morning here on San Antonio Sports Star. He's Rudy J. I'm Rob Thompson coming to you live from Phoenix, Arizona. It's Radio Row time, day 2 here. You know, today's the day things start picking up and you start seeing your good old friends that you run into at the Super Bowl every year. And I love welcoming Steve Palazzolo on the show. I first met Steve, I believe we ran into each other in Atlanta, I think was the first time we met.
Steve's like, I don't remember you.
But no,
because
the next thing is Steve's going to talk to probably 75 radio stations over the next 3 or 4
Give or
years.
take.
And given the fact that I'm the first one and probably were last time, I understand that I'm not remembered. But what I do remember from the conversation was the numbers that you guys offer are not the kind of numbers that your average sports fan normally consumes. The numbers that you guys offer are the ones that coaches use to win football games.
Yep.
And as we were prepping for this, Rudy goes, my question, and I'm going to ask Rudy's question. How do you come up with the formulas that are appropriate for what your coaches are chasing?
Yeah, so there's a lot to it, but it starts with us. We call it production-based scouting, right? Scouts watch players and they evaluate them, and they say, this guy's got good knee bend and arm length and all these different things. But we look at production and we say, hey, did this guy make the block or did he not? Did he make a great throw and it got dropped? Well, we're going to give credit for that throw. So we just go and add context to every single play in the NFL and in college football and just roll it up into production grades based off what the expectations are at those given positions around the NFL. So it's a production-based grade. And then from there, every NFL team, gets these grades, they get our data, and they have to figure out what to do with it, right? Which grades are most consistent from year to year, which facets of play are most consistent from year to year. What are we looking for in a player? We can identify the best run defenders, right? Like that was just a thing that wasn't quantified before, quantifying offensive line play. So it's then on the teams to say, okay, how do we use this data and which parts of it do we feel is most consistent when we start looking forward?
Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, I was going to say, one of the things I learned a long time is you can't fix anything that you can't measure.
Absolutely.
You've got to be able to find a way to measure it. So when you're talking about offensive lineman, like you were talking about, when you go, okay, let's grade an offensive lineman, is there like 3 or 4 guys that are linemen, a couple of coaches, and go, well, these are the 8 things that I know. If you're doing these, you're a great offensive lineman. And do you go in and find the number and the formula to quantify for all of those? I'm trying to get to where, how do you get to where they're going? Is the coaches bringing you saying, do this for us? Or do you go, hey, look what I just figured out?
No, we started this from scratch. I mean, we started this crazy guy in England named Neil Hornsby had an idea. Let's grade based off production. And another guy in England named Ben Stockwell. He's like our secret sauce behind the scenes. We just added, what if we add a +1 here and a +0.5 there? And it ended up working, right? We ended up, so we go through and we say, here's an inside zone play. Here's what we expect the backside tackle to do on this play. Here's what a +0.5 looks like. Here's what a +1 looks like. Here's what a -1 looks like. And we train our graders to see the game through the same eyes as much as possible. And we just do that. And we don't say, hey, this is Laramie Tunsil making the block, or this is the backup tackle making the block. We say, this is the left tackle making the block. Here's the expectation for this block. Put a grade on it. Be consistent with it. And then roll it all up at the end and see what comes out of it.
So it's just strictly numbers-based, no opinions, all numbers.
Yeah, we try to take opinion. I mean, the system itself is an opinion, but we train our graders to see it through the same eyes. So we're not looking for traits. We are literally looking for how well did a guy perform his job on a given play, doing that for 1,000 snaps per player, right, in a given season, and then understanding what those numbers mean at the end of the year.
Okay, so we're out of San Antonio. We're home of the Dallas Cowboys. We talk to Coach Mike McCarthy every week. And the way the season ended for Dallas, is that kind of where y'all graded Dak to where he would have a performance where it was just not very good? Is that how y'all graded him all year? 12 points, 2 interceptions? How did Dak grade with y'all pretty much the entire season?
So Dak's interesting because his grades, individual game grades can fluctuate just like in any game, right? But when you look at the totality of Dak's career, I think the ebbs and flows have really coincided with his supporting cast. Our grades have coincided with his supporting cast. So he had a great rookie season. Then 2017 and 18, he kind of dipped. Once Amari Cooper showed up, his grades went up. The offensive production went up. Once Kellen Moore was added to the mix, his offensive production went up. Like Dak was one of the most, if you look at expected points added, which is more of like a team production metric, Cowboys were excellent with Kellen Moore, with Amari Cooper in the lineup. They were good for the most part this year, but Dak's grades came down a little bit this year because, there was a lot of, forced passes to CeeDee Lamb. There was a lot of reliance on, say, one player instead of, I think the Cowboys in that, 2020 to, 21 range when they had multiple playmakers, it's easier to, run an offense then. So it wasn't that we predicted, hey, Dak's going to have this terrible performance in the playoffs, but his performance for us this year was at a low where he had peaked probably 2019 to 21, even with the injury. That was his peak from a performance standpoint. He took a bit of a step back this year, and it coincides with the supporting cast, I think.
He's Steve Palazzolo, PFF.com. It's Pro Football Focus. If you're a football connoisseur, if you understand the game, you will learn even more going to and it applies to so many different things. You'll win fantasy leagues with this too. It really does apply.
That is true. That is true.
It really is. It is something that if you go the extra step, because it really is the truest number. It's not just your heart going into it. It is really the truest number. So use these guys. Use Pro Football Focus and all that they have when it comes close to your fantasy football draft, just not to help you prognosticate for the football season. Now, I'm curious, for the numbers that you draw, how much of your work is, say, agents calling you guys? Like, let's get some numbers that help me go negotiate the deal, because the truest number is what I'm giving you guys. Do you guys play on that side of the fence too?
We like to say that we're Switzerland. Our data is Switzerland.
Right. It's raw data.
Yeah,
you apply it however you want. I just give you the data.
Exactly. So all 32 NFL teams have our information, our data. It goes right into their system. One of the big advantages is linking up our data to their video system so they can see it, right in front of them. But we work with a lot of agents as well. They want to, their job, of course, is to make their player look as good as possible. Agents love us when their players grade well, and they hate us. What does PFF know when their players don't grade well? We have literal agents who will go to Twitter and be like, "Oh, PFF's stupid. They don't know what they're talking about." And then a year later, they'll be like, "Look at this PFF number for my player. He was the second best corner in the NFL. Of course, they're right." So we just put it out there. Right?
You just provide information. So, do you have any coaches that just haven't bought in, that just don't want to give the analytics side of it any time of day and just continue to go eye testing what the film tells them?
Yeah. So the way I describe it, all 32 teams are completely different, right? They're 32 different businesses, right? Different business models, from the front office all the way down to the coach. So, I wouldn't expect a coach to say, "Oh, this guy's grading well, I should play him more." I don't know if that's the way to apply it necessarily, but we do have a lot of coaches that push back, because, and I would too, if I was a coach or if I was a GM, if I got hired as a GM tomorrow, I would trash PFF too,
Right.
You're trashing my player, so you have to protect your players and everything. But I think every team's just different, right? Some coaches are, much more by the book and by the numbers. So we evaluate players, but we also do fourth down decision-making suggestions and all that stuff. There are certainly some coaches who buy into that. There are other coaches who don't, and they just want to go by their gut and their feel. And I think we're seeing a lot of that around the NFL,
So,
different styles.
How much is the coaching staff interchangeable with your staff? You guys, your people are working with these numbers. Are you being poached, or do you guys kind of go back and forth? They work for a team for a while and come back. What happens there?
It depends. We have a former PFFer, Bobby Slowick, maybe.
We just talked about it.
Yeah.
Houston
Texans. I heard the update, right? He might be getting the Houston Texans offensive coordinator job. He worked under Kyle Shanahan, and then when he was in between jobs, he stopped at PFF for a couple of years, did some grading for us, and helped us hone our system. Zach Robinson's the quarterback coach with the Rams. He was in the offensive coordinator mix for the Chargers and maybe for the Ravens still. Zach spent a couple of years with us, grading quarterbacks and everything. And I think that for Zach in particular, that learning experience for him, he would watch every throw from every quarterback every single week. And that experience was invaluable for him going to the Rams. So there is some, movement back and forth, and some of our guys going to the NFL.
It feels like a technical internship for coaches. Anyway, moving on.
So these two teams, 7 different running backs. Kansas City uses like 4. The Eagles use like 3. What does the data say versus a team like these two that use multiple running backs versus like the Colts who just have Jonathan Taylor?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our data says, I try to say this as nicely as possible, but the running back is the most interchangeable position in football. It doesn't mean that there's a difference in skill level. Jonathan Taylor is awesome. Christian McCaffrey is awesome. And I know McCaffrey did help change that 49ers offense in part because of what he did in the pass game. But when we look at what leads to run game success, it's run blocking, it's play calling, running against lighter boxes, and then the quarterback. The quarterback is an absolute cheat code because he changes the math in the box, right? When you have an 8-man box, all of a sudden it's 8-on-8 when the quarterback can pull it and run. So I think running back production in general is dependent on other things. And then when you do get a good run block, good run blocking and a good system, a guy like Jonathan Taylor can have a huge season like he did in 2021. So the Eagles, I think, are prime example of that, right? Hurts. Because of having Hurts, a great offensive line, they're putting different running backs in there. They're all having success. Right. And the Chiefs running backs have success because teams have to play the pass, right? They're going to play lighter boxes and say, hey, we're going to invite you to run. And they have a good offensive line, and they'll have success with their running backs as well.
The Chiefs defensive line, can they handle what by the numbers, can they handle what the Eagles are going to throw at them?
I think it's going to be tough, right? I mean, it's been, they were able to dominate the Bengals up front.
Yeah.
Chris Jones is still awesome. Chris Jones will still get his, but they might not have the depth. Frank Clark gets sacks in the playoffs. He doesn't win one-on-one a ton as a pass rusher. George Karlaftis, rookie defensive end, hasn't really been great as far as winning one-on-ones, and the Eagles look like they should have that advantage unless Chris Jones has one of those games where it's 8 to 10 pressures and dominating. He's a special. He could still do that. But I don't think the Chiefs will have that same success they had against the Bengals, say, across the front.
That's the knowledge you get from Pro Football Focus. We are joined by Steve Palazzolo with the Focus Group. Real quickly, as far as where the NFL is, today's the State of the Union by our president. When you're looking at the numbers in total from the league, where's the league going? Is offense kind of slowing down? Is defense taking over? What are you seeing by the numbers where offenses are going and defenses are going?
Yeah, defense made a comeback this year. And, my prediction a few years ago was when all of the top 8 to 10 quarterbacks get older or move on, right, from that last era. It was pretty easy to define the best quarterbacks of the last era, right? You have Brady, Manning, Breeze, and Rodgers at the top, and you've got your Andrew Lucks and Russell Wilsons, Big Ben, Phillip Rivers, Matt Ryan, whatever it is. About 10 guys, right? As they've all moved on, I was predicting maybe we're going to get into this world in the NFL where it's a little bit, all over the place, right? You don't have Brady in the Super Bowl every single year. Remember 10, 12 years ago, you'd get, a random Eli Manning Super Bowl, a random Joe Flacco Super Bowl. Will we get to more of that? So I think we're in that transition period where, okay, Mahomes might still be the top guy in his own world,
right?
But he'll at least be challenged by teams led by Joe Burrow and by Josh Allen. And but do we have a clear defined 6 to 8 top quarterbacks who are always going to have their team in the mix? I don't know. That's maybe a little bit more inconsistent. So I think we might lead to this world where the middle tier quarterback, which I say with a lot of, reverence, right? Those are really good players, but it's QB 10 through 20, 22 in the NFL. Those guys might have a chance, right? You get into the Kyle Shanahan system. And so I think we're going to get into a more exciting time in the NFL because of that uncertainty at the quarterback position.
And speaking at quarterback, because they're playing the game differently, have you had to add any different quantifiers or additionals for the like, for example, Jalen, the way he forces the edge on the run on the RPOs, if he had to add something in there to give you a truer picture of what he does on the field?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely just getting more run plays for quarterbacks to evaluate, right? There were several games this year where Justin Fields, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson had Josh Allen, where they have 8, 10, 12, 15 carries per game. You never saw that, 15 years ago. And they are cheat codes. And I always say that a guy like Jalen Hurts or even Josh Allen, whoever, they raise the floor of your offense, right? So Jalen Hurts could go out there on Sunday, and if he's off as a passer, he could still add 80 yards on the ground and pick up first downs. Daniel Jones, I think, was the prime example with the Giants. He had games where he picked up 6 or 7 first downs with his legs and didn't really throw the ball all that well. And, that's how the Giants snuck up on people. So that's what's fascinating, too, about the NFL. Running quarterbacks, both in the design running game and as scramblers, 2 different things. But they just add, sneak a few first downs here and there, and it's sneaky good offense.
It's funny because it used to be frowned upon. Now it's like a weapon. But speaking of your buddy / former coworker Bobby Slowick, how did they get that out of Brock Purdy? What did y'all see that made Brock Purdy win 7, 8 games in a row, whatever it was?
There's a consistent history of Kyle Shanahan, right? I mean, we talk about coaches all the time, but there's really not a ton of NFL coaches who consistently elevate, say, the quarterback position or the offense. Andy Reid, I think, has taken nothing away from Patrick Mahomes, of course, but Andy Reid has a history of this, right? He's got a 20-plus year history of every offense is good, no matter which type of quarterback you give him. There's like 3 or 4 coaches where that's the case, and Kyle Shanahan's one of them. He did it in Houston with Matt Schaub. I mean, people are like, hey, Matt Schaub had an underrated career. Jimmy Garoppolo is really underrated if you look at his numbers. It's like everybody who played for Kyle Shanahan had sneaky good numbers, right? And it's because he's done a good job with that. And even the Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard's of the world.
Matt Ryan.
Yeah,
and was MVP with Matt Ryan.
And Matt Ryan was the best quarterback that Kyle Shanahan's ever had, right? He was the top 8 quarterback. And when you gave him Kyle Shanahan in year 2, MVP, right? And 9 yards per attempt and ridiculous numbers. So I don't take anything away from Brock Purdy. It's impressive what Purdy did, but he gets placed into this situation where there's been consistent success for about 15 years in Kyle Shanahan quarterbacks.
I could sit and talk with Steve
we could do this for an hour. So I'm
long. Kind of guy you want to have a beer with and just dig and ask questions. Steve, man, you're our first to the car wash. You're the first headlights that came through the sponge. We thank you for stopping by, man. It is always a pleasure. Take care of yourself.
Yeah. Thanks
you
for stopping by. It can only get worse from here, guys. Sorry about that.
It only goes downhill. We dropped the mic on this. He is Steve Palazzolo with Pro Football Focus. PFF.com. Go hit it right now. You want to get smart. You go there because I certainly feel smarter already this morning.